Right guys, we're learning how to find the gradient of a line today. And here's your starter. Keywords, gradient, they sometimes call it slope. Now let's see if we can start on the starter. So if x is equal to 2, what is y? So if x equals 2, we swap that for 2. So that means y must equal 2. You can do this yourself, pause the video. X equals 2, so that's 2 plus 2, so y equals 4. That means 2 times 2, so that equals 4. 2 times 2 plus 2. Remember BIDMAS, so y equals 6. Just going to jump to the answer now. 3 times 2 minus 2, so y equals 4. 7 minus 2, because we're substituting the x, is 5. Y equals 7 minus 2 times 2, that's 7 minus 4, that's 3. 2 squared plus 1, so that's y equals 5. So let's see if you can do this as a quick recap. So x equals 5. So 2 times 5 equals 10. If this is a 2-mark question, actually just writing that down is worth a mark, even if you get. If I can't solve it, I will award you 3 house points. Can you work these ones out? Vertical, horizontal, difference. Right, understanding gradient and slope, guys. An upward slope is a positive gradient. That's going from left to right, always left to right, like how you read. A horizontal line is called a zero gradient, and a downward slope from left to right, if you're skiing downhill, that's negative. Or if you're going down in the world, remember that's negative. If you're going up in the world, that's positive. That's a good way to remember it. The gradient is how steep a line is. Small gradient, if that's going slightly uphill, that's going to be a really large negative gradient. You're going down a mountain.
It always looks much better in the morning because the way the light hits it, it's just calling to be ridden.
Now this is to help you remember, because your brain remembers visuals and sounds.
Come off the rock.
This is going down a mountain.
The day before I was a little nervous.
So it's an extreme negative gradient, a very large negative gradient.
It's a big face and you don't want to slide down it.
And I would recommend to try snowboarding and skiing. It's a great little holiday, loads of fun, up in the mountains, beautiful. Now can you see he's going sideways down a mountain, because that's going to make his gradient actually a bit less than going straight down. That's the technique of snowboarders. Great jump. He landed it as well. Right, here's another example. So you're going uphill from left to right, that's a positive gradient. Now that bike going downhill, that's a negative gradient. Ooh. The red line has a larger gradient than the blue line. Why? Well, the red line is steeper. And we sometimes remember, this is sometimes called slope as well. Right, so which line has the largest gradient? It is A. Well done. If you got that. Now, which one has the smallest? Now, this is a bit of a trick question, but the smallest is actually C, because it's going downhill. So the gradient is also sometimes called M, and you need to remember that. Now let's find the gradients of these lines. So the rise, or how we call it, the rise versus the run, or up and across. So see how many squares up that is? That's 1. And 3. So that gradient, using that formula, is 1 over 3, or a third. This one is 2 because, can you see, when you're doing this on a graph, find a perfect triangle that hits these corners, because you don't want to do something like this. You don't want to do that type of triangle, because you don't know if that's a half for sure. And you just need to remember that. And that gradient is 2 because, can you see, that's the rise and that's the run, or is it? It's 4 up and 2 across, and 4 divided by 2 equals 2. So the gradient of that is 2. Your turn to give that a go. Pause the video. Can you see that's 4 and 2, so 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now can you see this is 2 and 6 across, so this one is 2 divided by 6 equals a third. Two, a third, and a half. If you got that, well done. Now that one's straightforward. It is 1. Why? Because that is 3 down and 3 across. Can you see that's 3 and 3? So 3 divided by 3 equals 1. Try this one yourself. And that will be 6, because it's, can you see the 6 squares and 1 square across? 6 divided by 1 is 6. Now this is for you to try on your own. Can you find the gradients of all these points? Just pause the video, have a go. Answers are 2, a third, minus 3, 1, minus 2, minus a third, 5, minus 5, 1/5, and minus 3 over 4. There's a larger negative, perfect corner to corner on these types of questions. So this question will throw people out or throw people off. There's a common misconception, and it's a common mistake people make. Can you look at the scale of this is different? So you cannot just count squares. Well, you can for this one because the scale was going up by 1 each time. But can you see each square is worth 2 here? Now that's minus 8 and minus 4. That's 4 and 8. So can you see? Yep, that goes from the coordinate 9 to 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. So that's 6 up. But can you see that is actually 8? So this gradient will be 6 over 8. It's going downhill from left to right. So that's minus 6 over 8. And simplified, that'll be minus 3 over 4. Divide top and bottom by 2. And that's the gradient. Right. Later on, you do need to be able to find the gradient from 2 points. That's almost a grade 5 topic, where they just give you 2 coordinates. You could get a question like this, so just remember how to plot your coordinates. Drawing a line up. Don't really need it, but you do need to make that triangle. They've got a cross first and up, but I always go vertical. And then you can see that that is 3. 4 squares. The scale was correct, so the gradient of that is 3 over 4. And this will really help you understand gradient. Right, 2 exam questions here for you to give it a go. Pause. Can you see that's 3 and that's 1? So 3 divided 1 equals 3, that's the gradient. Can you see that perfect triangle? Fits those corners nicely. Now, let's choose a purple. Now, if I chose to make a bigger triangle, that's fine as well, but make it easy for yourself. Can you see that's 2 here? And that's 6. So you still get the same answer. We call gradient M sometimes. And this one, so this gradient is 2 over 1, but remember it's going downhill, so that gradient is -2. Another 2 exam questions to try yourself. Pause the video, have a go. So you're working out. Line B. It's a bit more difficult to find a perfect triangle here. You cannot do this to here because you don't know how much that is really. So just try to find an area where it crosses the corners of the squares perfectly. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. So that gradient is 5 over 2. That gives you your A1 mark. And actually probably drawing that will give you your method mark. So if you can do that, that will be 2 out of 2 marks in the exam. Well done, guys. But I've left something out here because this is actually going downhill, so that is negative. And you can see how it's quite easy to make a mistake like that. Right, be careful here. There's a nice little triangle here, but can you see how far up is it by the scale? That's going up in 2, so that is actually 4. Now can you see from here to here it's 2 squares, but it's actually only worth 1 on this scale. So that gradient is 4 over 1, and that equals 4. Right, now on to gradient from 2 points on a line, and sometimes you're just given coordinates. Now I'm going to go back to this question here, and I'm going to pick 2 coordinates as a nice little example. Now can you see that coordinate? Oh, it's not such a nice one, but that x coordinate is 2.5 and the y coordinate is 10. So imagine they could give you a question, what's the gradient between those 2 points, and this is 1.5 and 6. Now the gradient formula is y2 minus y. Now the gradient formula is actually, I'll call it m, which is actually equal to the gradient. That's the letter we use in maths for gradient, m, remember that. Actually equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. That's if you get given 2 points. And it should make sense, because let's see, if this is 10 and that is 6, can you see from here to here, 10 minus 6 will actually give you the height of the gradient, which gives you that 4. That's the y2. So that's the second y coordinate, that's the first y coordinate. That's where the y2 minus y1 comes from. And then now, if you look at the x coordinate, this is the x2 coordinate. That's the x1 coordinate. And 2.5 minus 1.5 is actually 1, so that equals 4. The gradient of that is 4 using the formula. So you could get a question when they just give you 2 points, and like I told you, you see m is actually the gradient, and you can see it's called the rise divided by the run, or the change in y over the change in x, and that's the formula y2 minus y1. So let's try this. So always label the second coordinate. So that's the second y coordinate, that's the second x coordinate, that's the first y coordinate, and the first x coordinate. So using this formula, y2, so y2 is 10, and minus y1 is 4, divided by x2 is 3, minus x1 is 1. That becomes 6 over 2, which equals 3. Let's try this one. This is y2, y1, x2, x1. So now we get 1, because that's y2, minus y1, 7, divided by 8, that's x2, minus the first x coordinate, minus 5. This is where your negative numbers has to be good. So that becomes minus 6 over 3, which equals minus 2. And one more example for you, y2, y1, x2, x1. When you get really good at this, you don't even need to use a formula. You can do this mentally, but it's good to write this down for method marks in the exam. Now you've got minus 1, minus 2, so you get 8 over minus 3, so that turns that fraction negative. And those are the answers. Now give those a go yourself. I'm just going to choose a random question for you here to do for you. Let's choose one where you're going to get some negative numbers. Let's do this one because this could catch you out. So, just so to make this clear, this is y2. That's x2, second x coordinate. This is the first y coordinate. And the first x coordinate. So let's write that down here. So you've got minus 5 minus 4 divided by x2, which equals 9, and x1, which is minus 1. So it's minus minus 1. Now this is an important point. Two negatives together become a what? A plus. So that becomes minus 9 over 10. Pause the video, give all those questions a go. That will cement your understanding and you'll get a bit of practice with negative numbers. I'm going to show the answers to this. Now this one you probably have to do with a calculator, but you could do that non-calc, just use the bus dot method for division and division of decimals. So here you go, here's a 2-mark exam question. Make sure you can do this, and that's what the exam question could look like in the exam. It's good for you to get used to the wording and what it looks like so you don't get confused. I'm just going to do these for you now. So that's y2, y1, x2, x1. So you've got 6 minus 1 divided by x2 is 6 and x1 is minus 4. Can you see? You've got to realise that's a plus. So 6 minus 1 is 5 divided by 10, which is 0.54 1/2. This is your method mark. That's your answer mark. You got that? Excellent work, guys. Now here we go. This is when what I told you, when they give you 2 points. So let's call that y2, y1, x2, x1. So you can do this quickly. You know, what's 22 minus 4? That's got to be 18 divided by 7 take away 1, which is 6. 18 divided by 6, the gradient is 3. And just writing that will get you your method. And that's your answer mark.